Welcome back. It's D-Day for Donald Trump. Not only is he the first US president in history to be impeached twice while in office, he also is the first former US president to be criminally charged. Days after a New York grand jury indicted him, Trump is now going to be surrendering in the Manhattan court in just a short while from now. Donald Trump faces more than 30 counts related to business fraud in that indictment. The investigation by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office began when Trump was still in the White House and in office. It relates to a $130,000 payment that was made by Trump's then personal attorney, Michael Cohen, to porn star Stormy Daniels in late October 2016. This happened days before the presidential election, allegedly to silence her from going public about an alleged affair with Donald Trump a decade earlier. Now, Donald Trump has denied that affair. Hush money payments aren't illegal, at least in the United States and some parts of it. There have been other historical events where hush money payments have been made and those have become public as well. But ahead of the indictment, prosecutors were weighing whether to charge Trump with falsifying business records of the Trump Organization for how it reflected the reimbursement of payment to Cohen, who said he advanced the money to Daniels. To prove the case, prosecutors would need to show Donald Trump intended to commit a crime. Meanwhile, Trump himself has blasted the indictment, vowing to defeat the left and crooked Democrats, as he called them. He said in a statement, and I quote, "I believe this witch hunt will backfire massively on Joe Biden. The American people realize exactly what the radical left Democrats are doing here. So our movement and our party, united and strong, will first defeat Alvin Bragg and then defeat Joe Biden. We are going to throw every last one of these crooked Democrats out of office so we can make America great again." That's the statement that came to the fore from Donald Trump. Listen in to what his attorney had to say just minutes before we see Trump enter the Manhattan courthouse.
There's no indication that there will be a gag order. It can't happen in this case. Look, when you have a gag order, you have to balance a couple things. The First Amendment, right, which is important to all of Americans, and the right to a fair trial for both sides. So that's a balancing act. Here you have something uniquely different. The defendant is the leading Republican candidate for the office of the President of the United States and will be campaigning. Hard to put a gag order when he's going to be fielding questions about his current legal situation. So, but there's been no indication that there'll be a gag order imposed or even attempted to be.
I'll travel around anywhere on the East Coast to see him. He does his all for us. I'm going to give my all for him. You know, I'm not giving up. We need him back. This economy's a joke. I went shopping last night and I broke my bank account, so it feels like the right thing to do. You know, he's got enough supporters, but he could always use more, and it just means the world to me. It makes me feel like I'm a part of something too.
Donald Trump's arraignment is going to happen shortly, and joining me on this broadcast is a very special guest who is the Nixon-era White House Counsel, also a Watergate whistleblower, John Dean. Thank you so much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. And we do know that New York grand jury broke historical precedent when it indicted the former US president. Now, the formal indictment is still under seal, so we don't really know what the specific charges are that he faces yet. But to put this in context for our Indian viewers here, could you elaborate on how big a deal this really is?
Is that question to me?
Yes, Mr. Dean, go ahead.
Okay, fine. We do not know the details yet. We have some indication of the parameters that will be 30 counts, criminal counts, felony counts in the indictment, and we'll all learn about the same time in a very short while. So it's an unprecedented step. We've never had a president or former president who's been indicted. We have been close before, but never has any prosecutor ever brought this action. When I say close, Richard Nixon, my president, they were drafting, the Watergate Special Prosecution Force was drafting an indictment, but when his predecessor, his successor, Gerald Ford, pardoned him, they stopped drafting because they could bring no action at that point. There'd be no basis for a criminal charge. It also happened during the presidency of Bill Clinton, where they thought he had lied in front of a grand jury that was investigating his relationship with a young lady named Monica Lewinsky. He later would confess that he did lie, but they worked out a deal to not prosecute him and merely have him admit his wrongdoing, and that would be sufficient. But we've never been to an indictment before.
Yes, and that's really why it's such a big deal. We're also learning that we could be seeing Donald Trump actually give a soundbite perhaps while he walks the corridors of the lower Manhattan court. Do you think he's going to, make a big spectacle out of this, try and mobilize his core voters by playing the victim card?
He has a long practice of trying to use his worst moments for political advantage. Why people would be attracted to the fact that he's gotten himself in trouble, why they're sending money to him, it's not everybody, including me, understand. The Republican Party used to be the party of law and order. Here they're openly embracing a type of corruption that many Americans are finding surprising. In the long pull, in the long run, when it gets back to the November elections, if Mr. Trump is the nominee, no one really believes this is going to be to his advantage. It's a short-term gain he's getting, if any.
Sure. So many believe that he's not going to actually win even if he is nominated. But do you think that kind of sympathy card that he's trying to play or making that entire spectacle is actually going to get him that nomination from the Republican Party? Because hush money paid to a porn star is something that's difficult to get consensus on. So I want to ask you what you think the 2024 presidential race really will look like.
Well, Donald Trump's base is very supportive of him. He's a clear authoritarian personality. He's attracted authoritarian followers, people who want to be told how to think and what to do. And so he has a lot of appeal to these people. Now, while he can get the nomination, that isn't enough to get him elected. So there's a big difference. And while these people might support him for the nomination, to get through the general election, it's doubtful this behavior is going to be advantageous at that point.
Sure. Advantageous or not, all eyes are, of course, on this particular case when it does go to trial, not just in the United States of America, but in the rest of the world as well. How difficult is it going to be to actually prove these charges against him, do you think?
You know, we don't know, but we do know that the prosecutor who's bringing these first set of charges, and there are other investigations ongoing as well, but this first prosecutor is a very careful man. He's new in the job, he's elected to that post, and it's very unlikely, given the history of this office, that he wouldn't bring a very strong case. We don't know the case at this point. There's been a lot of speculation that's going to relate to the former president paying hush money to quiet a woman with whom he had an affair, a porn star no less. But we don't have all those details or how he has formed the case, built the case. But we do know he's not likely to have just thrown something out there that he doesn't think he can win. And indeed, the grand jury that actually did the indictment, they too were convinced this was a very winnable case.
Sure, winnable or not, we'll find out soon enough. That arraignment is going to happen in just a few minutes from now. But it was a pleasure speaking to you, John Dean. Thank you so much for speaking with us here and putting that in perspective for our Indian viewers as well.
Pleasure.